It is debate night tonight. I'm going to give you a little preview of what's to come. We're going to talk Bloomberg and Bernie. We're going to talk Buttigieg. Is AG Barr going to resign? Should you care if he resigns? Amy Klobuchar, maybe the worst pandering I've ever heard. That and more coming up right now on I'm Right. Well, if there's one thing you know I don't do here on I'm Right, I don't do the sky's falling every night. I think that's absurd. I think it creates stress in people that doesn't have to be there. And I think it's boring. I think eventually you sit around and you're like, dude, the world can't be ending every day. There's not a new bombshell every day. Some days are important. Some days they aren't important. There are people who lack talent who have to scream at the TV every single night and tell you how this is the end of the planet. We don't do that here. That said, tonight, not the end of the world by any means, but if you've been skipping all these Democrat debates, I certainly understand. There's only so much of that you can pour into your ear without vomiting on the floor. Tonight's the night you want to watch. Why? Well, because the knives are out now. You know, every campaign starts out the same way. Every primary starts out the same way. Republicans, Democrats, they all do the same thing. All the candidates, as they're getting in, this guy will get in this week, and this girl will get in the following week. And they all do this thing in the beginning where, you know, we're all friends. We're all on the same team. It's just, we're just out here being friendly friends. And then as soon as the race gets close, as soon as it comes down to winning time, all the knives come out. Well, that's what you're going to see now. You've seen massive opposition research dumps on Bernie Sanders. You've seen some on Pete Buttigieg, although he's remained pretty clean. And you've seen a mountain of it dumped on Michael Bloomberg for the past week or two. That's because Bloomberg's outspending everybody, rapidly climbing in the polls. The other candidates are nervous, and we're going to find out. Bloomberg going to be on the debate stage tonight. Oof. And it might get ugly out there. First of all, let's talk about Bloomberg's campaign manager trying to explain about qualifying for the debate. Quote, "We're headed to Nevada. Our campaign is seeing a groundswell of support across the country, and qualifying for the February 19th debate is the latest sign that Mike Bloomberg's plan and ability to defeat Donald Trump is resonating with more and more Americans." Look, it's not a sign of anything except for the fact that Mike Bloomberg paid or wormed or manipulated his way into the DNC, and they changed the rules to get Mike Bloomberg in this debate. The only reason Mike Bloomberg is standing on that stage tonight is because Mike Bloomberg wants to be on that stage tonight. And let's do a brief state of the race for you here, because I realize everybody's busy and you all don't have time to nerd out on politics all the day long. Right now, Pete Buttigieg is leading in the delegate count. But Bernie Sanders is the tops in the polls. And if you look at the upcoming states, Bernie Sanders leads the polls in virtually every single state. What I'm saying to you is we have the Nevada caucus coming. We have the South Carolina primary coming. And then we have the Democrat Super Tuesday coming. There is a very good chance, unless somebody can overtake Bernie Sanders and steal some of those states, that Bernie Sanders is going to have such a lead by the end of Super Tuesday that it's going to be virtually insurmountable. So while all the other candidates are desperately tearing apart Mike Bloomberg, you'll see parts of the Democrat Party screaming, "Focus on Bernie!" Because Bernie, there's a very good chance he's going to prove me wrong and have this thing wrapped up really, really quickly. Why is Mike Bloomberg on that debate stage? Because he knows it as well. Rumors are already swirling today that Mike Bloomberg is telling other candidates, you need to get out or it's going to be Bernie. You need to get out now or it's going to be Bernie. That's just where we are, ladies and gentlemen. But the problem for Mike Bloomberg is he has a long record of being in the public eye, of being a politician, of being a billionaire. And when you have a long record of being in the public eye, on top of the fact you're a snobby New York billionaire who frankly looks down on basically everyone underneath the sun, you end up with video clips like this one, and it's going to be brought up tonight.
This cohort of Black and Latino males aged, let's say, 16 to 25, that don't have jobs, don't have any prospects, don't know how to find jobs, don't know what their skill sets are, don't know how to behave in the workplace where they have to work collaboratively.
Okay. He's also saying this about the victim group that the Democrat Party loves to pander to. What if Mike Bloomberg is the nominee and they have him on video saying this about trans people?
throw the bums out. They haven't delivered. They didn't listen to us. If you go to the middle of the country, people would say, if your conversation during a presidential election is about some guy wearing a dress and whether he, she, or it can go to and go to the locker room with their daughter, that's not a winning formula for most people.
You know what's funny about that? Is in concept, he's right. It's not a winning formula. The trans issue, I've long thought, is a total loser for the Democrat Party. They think they're being tolerant. They think they're appealing to another victim group. But the truth of the matter is there aren't that many transgender people. The percentage is way, 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 way less than 1% of the country. And there are still plenty of people, although they won't admit it, who look at that and think, ugh, that's just a fact. It's not a winner of an issue, so he's right about that. Nevertheless, when you're trying to get through a Democrat primary, you would better make sure you're worshiping the latest victim group, or they're going to crush you for it. Joe Biden's getting in on the action.
Passed a health care bill that does absolutely nothing to fix the big health care problems in this country. It is just a disgrace. I would argue that today we are more segregated in America, certainly, than we were in terms of race, than we were a dozen years ago. Why, during the Obama administration, didn't we pull together? Well, I asked the president. That's his job, really, to pull people together. Obama did basically nothing. That administration did almost nothing.
You say that you're a big fan of Donald Trump.
I'm a friend of Donald Trump's. He's a New York icon.
You've actually been quite...
Thank you for staying with me. If that seemed kind of long and brutal, it's because that was very long and very brutal. And that is Exhibit A as to why Joe Biden is going to be bye-bye after South Carolina. That was his ad that he was attacking Bloomberg, I guess, kind of. It didn't come across that well. It was way too long. It was poorly produced. You're talking mainly to old people when you're talking to voters. The words were too small on the screen. They don't understand what Instagram DMs even actually are. Joe Biden sucks. He's not the only one attacking Bloomberg, though. Bernie's getting in on it.
And let me also say a word about the current campaign and say to you that regardless of how much money a multi-billionaire candidate is willing to spend on his election, we will not create the energy and excitement we need to defeat Donald Trump if that candidate pursued, advocated for, and enacted racist policies like stop and frisk, which cause communities of color in his city to live in fear.
Fear. I'm sorry, I can make fun of that accent all day long. It's my show. I'm allowed to do offensive things here. Thank you first. Now, well, Bloomberg isn't really good at this either. You see, you can attack other candidates. What you can't do or shouldn't do is attack the other candidate's supporters. I mean, you're going to need those people if you're the nominee. Nevertheless, Bloomberg has decided that the leading candidate in the field, Bernie Sanders, it's probably a good idea to poke all his supporters in the ribs.
It is vitally important for those of us who hold different views to be able to engage in a civil discourse.
Not exactly a winner of a campaign strategy. Remind me after the show, ladies and gentlemen, to text that number. I absolutely want to get on Bloomberg's campaign list, though. I think that would be hilarious. Not content just to fight, other candidates. Bernie bros, they actually are angry, though, and now they're fighting with each other. This was over some gun issue. A couple dudes just decide to brawl it out at a campaign rally. And I've been to a bunch of different campaign rallies, Tea parties back in the day. I went to a big Trump rally down here. They're always kind of happy affairs. Apparently it's not that way at the socialist ones. That's too bad. Donald Trump took to Twitter and said this. Minnie is illegally buying the Democratic nomination. They are taking it away from Bernie again. Minnie Mike, major party nominations are not for sale. Good luck in the debate tomorrow night. And remember, no standing on boxes. Attaboy, Trump, go get him. Elizabeth Warren, though, not content to be the only one not counting coup on Bloomberg, comes out and says, quote, "It's a shame Mike Bloomberg can buy his way into the debate, but at least now primary voters curious about how each candidate will take on Donald Trump can get a live demonstration of how we each take on an egomaniac billionaire." Ladies and gentlemen, like I told you at the very beginning of this segment, I understand the Democrat debates have been painful. You haven't probably watched most of them, or you've tuned in briefly. If you're going to watch one, tonight is the one to watch when all the knives come out. All of that may have made you uncomfortable, but I'm right. Coming up next, we got Cam Edwards, bearingarms.com. Hang on. Joining me now, the editor of bearingarms.com, Cam Edwards. Cam, before we get to all the debate preview tonight, you're our resident gun expert and definitely our resident expert on all the craziness going on in Virginia. What's happening with this gun-grabbing House bill over there? I hear it failed.
It did fail. It's been passed by for the year, thankfully, but it is going to come back next year. House Bill 961 was sent to the Virginia Crime Commission to be studied, basically. So it's done for the year. Governor Northam could try to reintroduce this language in one of the gun control bills that is moving forward. But I think Democrats have sent a pretty clear signal that this is a bridge too far, at least for the Virginia Senate Democrats. So we do have a number of bad bills that we're going to be dealing with, including red flag laws, gun rationing, bills dealing with minor access to firearms, bills that change the training requirements for concealed carry. We're going to see a lot of bad bills become bad laws, but thankfully it doesn't look like the gun ban, the magazine ban, the suppressor ban is going to be one of them.
Why did it fail? I mean, they seemed pretty emphatic about it when it was coming out. Why the change of heart?
Well, I think the Senate was always going to be difficult for Ralph Northam. There were 4 Democrat state senators who came out pretty early on and said, look, we are not going to support anything that takes people's guns or magazines or suppressors away, the stuff that people legally own. And this bill, it was watered down. It was weakened over the course of the legislative process. But when it got over to the Senate side, it was still going to be a misdemeanor to possess a magazine that could accept more than 12 rounds of ammunition. And it was going to be a felony to transport that magazine. And so that was why Senator Chap Peterson said he voted against the bill. There were a couple of other members, Craig Deeds, Senator John Edwards on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Democrats who voted against the bill as well. And I think Senator Craig Deeds said, look, we've already passed a lot of gun control bills. I think we've passed enough for the year. I think it was pretty clear that these state senators, most of whom represent pretty rural parts of the state, they were hearing from their constituents. And while we have been objecting to all of Ralph Northam's, gun control agenda, this was the centerpiece. This was, I think, the worst bill. And so I think a lot of these Senate Democrats decided, all right, I'll vote for the other ones. But this one would just be a bridge too far for my political career and for my constituents.
Cam, I've got a big problem with red flag laws in general. If you wouldn't mind, break it down in the way Cam Edwards can. What exactly is a red flag law, and what is the one coming in your state that you seem to think is going to pass?
Sure. So we've got two competing versions right now in Virginia, but basically red flag laws, otherwise known as extreme risk protection orders. They allow law enforcement, or in some states, family members, former teachers, coworkers, to petition the court and say, look, I think that Jesse is a danger to himself or maybe to other people. You don't get to be a part of this hearing. The judge will decide based on one side's evidence and a very low standard of evidence whether or not he believes that there's a substantial risk that you could be a danger to yourself or others. If that's the case, then an order would be issued, a warrant would be issued, your firearms would be seized, or in some states, you would be allowed to turn these firearms in. But after that, Jesse, you, the person that, a judge says, yeah, I think Jesse's dangerous to himself or others, they take your guns and then they leave you alone, right? This is not a mental health bill. This is a gun control bill. And even in states like Indiana and Connecticut that have had these laws on the books the longest, gun-related suicides have declined a little bit. That's true. But the overall suicide rate has increased. It's outpaced the decrease in firearm-related suicide. So this is not saving lives. This is, I think, abusing people's constitutional rights, not just their Second Amendment rights, but their Fourth Amendment rights as well. I believe it's a gun control bill that's masquerading as a mental health bill, when in truth, we have some real problems with our mental health system, particularly our public mental health system in the state of Virginia and around the country. And this is an easy way for lawmakers to say that they did something without actually addressing the real problem at the expense of our constitutional rights.
Cam, what is the problem with our mental health system? Now, all I know is generalities here, but I know this. Mental health has been a problem for every society throughout the history of mankind. It's always been difficult to deal with. Societies have dealt with it in oftentimes barbaric ways, or in our case, they don't seem to deal with it at all. What is our mental health crisis in this country?
Well, I can tell you in Virginia, we don't have enough spaces. There are days where you can have a person that is, got suicidal ideation. They are in a mental health crisis, and there's no place to put them. The state-run beds are full. The private facilities can't accept them. And so what happens is these individuals sit in a jail cell, and they basically, become a part of the criminal justice system instead of the mental health system. I spoke with Sheriff Scott Jenkins, who's the sheriff of Culpeper County, Virginia, earlier today for Bearing Arms Cam Company. He talked about this problem. This is one of the issues that he has with red flag laws, is because it allows lawmakers to bypass the real issues here. So, going back to the 60s and 70s, we saw the deinstitutionalization in this country. We had a lot of asylums and facilities that were shut down and people were put back on the streets. And really since then, I don't think we've devoted the resources necessary to deal with those acute crises in this nation. And then, the broader issue of mental health, I think, suicide rates are at their highest since World War II. Opioid overdose death rates, sky high. We have a problem with people taking their own lives, but again, going after guns and not helping that person who's in crisis, that's no way to address the issue at all.
Yeah, I can't believe we're dealing with mental health this way. That's just crazy to me.
No pun intended.
No, I intended it, Cam. That's just what I do. All right, the debate preview tonight. The debate tonight. I think they're all going to tear at Bloomberg. How do you see this working out? Because I see it working out as everybody going after Bloomberg and making the primary all about Bloomberg. Am I wrong?
No, I think that's right. Bloomberg is certainly the guy who's been surging in the polls, and every other candidate has a reason to go after Bloomberg, right? Sanders wants to draw that contrast between the crony capitalist billionaire who's buying the election and what he sees as this aspirational campaign that's bringing in a lot of grassroots Americans. Joe Biden wants to prove that he actually is the establishment candidate, that folks should stick with him and not, flip to Bloomberg. And meanwhile, Klobuchar and Buttigieg and Warren are going to be trying to remind people that they're still on the stage and trying to convince America that they're still viable candidates. So they're going to be taking their own shots at Bloomberg because he is the man of the hour. I think, it's going to be fascinating just because I think when you look at the campaign ads that Bloomberg has been flooding the country with, all of the surrogates that he's paying to have talk about him, we actually haven't seen a lot of Michael Bloomberg. And I think it's because he's pretty unlikable in person. When you sit there and you listen to him and he talks, I think the more he says, the less America is going to like. what they're hearing. And so I think this is going to be a really interesting conundrum for Michael Bloomberg because the spotlight is going to be on him. And how does he respond in a way that doesn't turn off a lot of voters?
Yeah, you would understand everything about that. Thank you, Cam Edwards, bearingarms.com. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you, Jesse. We'll talk soon.
Be good, man. All right, we got more coming. Hang on. I woke up this morning to rumors floating around Washington, D.C. that AG Barr might resign. If Donald Trump doesn't start tweeting, AG Barr is threatening to resign. So here's AG Barr on ABC News, kind of saying Trump needs to lay off Twitter, makes my job really hard.
To have public statements and tweets made about the department, about our people in the department, our men and women here, about cases pending in the department, and about judges before whom we have cases, make it impossible for me to do my job and to assure the courts and the prosecutors in the department that we're doing our work with integrity.
Integrity. We'll get back to that in a second. Here's President Trump tweeting in response, quote, "The president has never asked me to do anything in a criminal case," end quote. AG Barr, "This doesn't mean that I do not have, as president, the legal right to do so. I do, but I have so far chosen not to." So we may see some elevated tensions there. The DOJ responded to the rumors about AG Barr resigning by saying this, quote, "Addressing Beltway rumors, the Attorney General has no plans to resign." Allow me to just say this really quickly, ladies and gentlemen. Why would I care? I mean, look, let's say he doesn't have plans to resign. That's the most likely thing. The most likely thing is everyone's kind of bored right now. All the Mueller probe stuff is done. The impeachment stuff is done. There's no major scandal. So Washington does what Washington does, and they just brew one up. But what if it's real? Why do I care? What has AG Barr done? I'm sorry. I know that's going to make a lot of you mad. I love Barr. Why? Tell me why. I have the former deputy director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation lying under oath multiple times at a time when the United States of America, their citizens, think that the big people in government, the Democrats in government, are never held accountable for when they commit crimes. And AG Barr takes a look at Andy McCabe lying under oath and says, not going to prosecute. Why would I give a crap if yet another useless lawyer chooses to resign as AG? Goodbye, Barr. Well, I have no use for you. People complained about Sessions all the day long. Why? What's AG Barr done different than Sessions? Shoot, I can hire my phone as AG to sit there on the desk and not do anything. Anybody can not charge people with things. I don't even have a law degree, and you know what? I can not charge people with things. As of right now, until proven wrong, I say to you, AG Barr is yet another swamp rat who is completely unaware of what's happening in the United States of America. We have a situation in this country where people are losing faith in the institutions rapidly. And the people in Washington are just, everything's fine. That's all fine, right? It's fine, right? Somebody had better start swinging from the gallows on these things, or let me tell you what, people, as I've told you before, when they write the history of why the United States of America fell, 1,000 years from now, when historians are looking, American people losing faith in the rule of law is going to be part of that history. Mark my words. Start prosecuting people in the government club or be gone with you, Barr. Stop threatening to resign. Don't threaten me with a good time. All right, we got more. Hang on. Pete Buttigieg is an interesting character. We've kind of stopped talking about him because it's more fun to make fun of Joe Biden not knowing which state he's in. It's more fun to talk about Bernie Sanders, who's leading, Mike Bloomberg, who's rising. But Pete Buttigieg is currently the delegate leader. And even if he's not number one, he's 2 or 3 in every single poll. And I've never gotten the Buttigieg thing. I just find him to be extremely unappealing. But I'm a Republican and he's a commie, so that would make sense. Either way, he goes on last night and says something about Donald Trump that I find to be really interesting. And it's something that Democrats have echoed for 3 years, that the tiny portion of anti-Trump Republicans have echoed for 3 years. Listen to what he says real quick here, and I'll address it.
The idea of the likes of Rush Limbaugh or Donald Trump lecturing anybody on family values? I mean, I'm sorry, but one thing about my marriage is it's never involved me having to send hush money to a porn star after cheating on my spouse with him or her. So, they want to debate family values? Let's debate family values. I'm ready.
The funny thing about this and what people do not seem to understand is everybody on the right who voted for Donald Trump's hardcore evangelical base who voted for Donald Trump, they know about the porn star thing. They know about Donald Trump's personal life. They understand that he's not the second coming of Christ. But they've given themselves no ability to take away any of those evangelical voters with their positions on things. I believe for a fact that evangelical voters would consider even voting for Pete Buttigieg. I don't think the gay thing would bother too many of them. Even if it would, though, his abortion stance would. When the Democrat Party as a whole, universally now, when they have decided that third trimester abortions are just fine, that a baby even born alive can be denied medical protections. We have multiple national Democrats on tape saying things like that. You've eliminated any chance you're going to get any kind of a percentage of the evangelical voters. They would turn around and vote for the Antichrist himself before they voted for somebody who takes these positions. And so what bothers me is it's not about the family values thing. I shouldn't say bothers me, but what I find funny is they don't realize it's not about the family values thing. It's not about the porn star thing. It's about the fact you believe in killing kids. That, understandably, is kind of a hang-up for people. That bothers people. It's not about personally what politicians do. It's about the politicians they push. And shouldn't that be the way it is? I mean, look, other than me, everyone has flaws. Pete Buttigieg has some flaws. Speaking appropriate Spanish seems to be one of them.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the chance to join you. Gracias por invitarnos para hablar this evening. And I bring greetings from South Bend. Not quite sleeping enough, but delighted to be with you.
You know what? I know this may shock you, but I was a very bad student, and I had to take Spanish a couple times in high school. When I was attempting my, year-end tests where I had to speak a sentence of Spanish, it sounded better than that just did right there. And it's this weird thing Democrats have to do. We're going to play you an even cringier one than that here in the next segment. But it's this weird thing where they have to pick these very specific, very separate groups, and they pander just towards them. And they just look terrible. They look terrible doing it every time. Nobody can just be who they are. You have to get up there and kind of stumble through Spanglish on the stage. It's hilarious. All right. You thought you've seen the worst campaign cringe ever? Let me tell you what, people. You are mistaken. Hang on. Amy Klobuchar was, the hot candidate in the race for about 30 seconds after finishing, I believe it was third in New Hampshire. Don't ask me how that works. Either way, she had to do an interview with Telemundo. Telemundo, you heard me say that, right? Where she was asked about who the Mexican president is, and, well, just watch.
To meet with me. And I ask because it's so important, especially Nevada, California, Arizona, Texas. This is our neighbor to the south. Do you know anything about him? Specifically his politics, what he's doing, since this would be the country you would share a border with? Anything you can tell me about him? I know that they are neighbors, and regardless of who the leader is, that it is someone that I will work with.
Do you? I'm sorry to ask this, but do you know who he is? Do you know his name?
Yeah. I know that he is the Mexican president.
But can you tell me his name?
No. So.
Don't you think it would be important if you're running for president to know who the president of Mexico, the country to the south of the United States, is?
Yes.
Because it affects so many Americans. Mexican Americans are the largest Hispanic, the largest number of Hispanics in the U.S. are Mexican Americans.
Of course it is.
The best part of that is halfway through the interview when he actually asks the name and she doesn't know the name. And you could see from then on the look on her face is, oh gosh, this video is going to be everywhere, isn't it? Like you can see, it's just written all over her face. But that actually wasn't the pandering part I was talking about. That's the worst thing I've ever seen. Amy Klobuchar, coming fresh off of not knowing the name of the Mexican president, decides she's going to do that Hispanic voter reach out. And boy, did it go really well.
About me, my name is Amy, and when I took Spanish in 4th grade, my name was Elena. They gave me the name me llamo Elena because I couldn't roll my R's very well, and so it was Elena. And I am just first. My story is this.
They used to call me my name's Amy, but they used to call me Elena in Spanish class. Surely you can relate to that, right, lady? Gosh, these people. All right, watch the debate tonight. We're going to have all the highlights for you tomorrow. We'll make fun of everybody. We'll get you informed. I'll see you then.